Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next episode of CAOverwatch. As always, I am one of your hosts, Spencer, and with me is Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Pretty good, actually. Great timing right before we started filming this. Karen, shout out to Karen, you're amazing. Sent me over a gift package from the Toronto Defiant, including this signed shirt.
Looking good.
From the players and a little sweet message, and it was super nice to receive.
Yeah, no, I mean, I bet. Unfortunately, obviously, as you know, I'm not currently in Whitby, so I was unable to get the package. However, I do think that was a really cool sort of initiative that Toronto did, which was like they went around all over Toronto and like sort of handed out these care packages to a bunch of the fans. So, I mean, overall, that was a really, really cool thing that they did for like fan engagement. It was a really cool video. I watched it. It was awesome. But yeah, I mean, other than handing out some sweet merch, which I think was really good, their game this weekend versus the Dallas Fuel was a little bit less so. So how about we just jump right into that, Chris?
That's good.
Yep. So for people who, for some reason, didn't watch the game and watch us, I want to hear us talk about it. The Dallas Fuel beat the Toronto Defiant 3-0. And what was, I think for the most part, a game that I thought under normal circumstances we should win. Right? Like, I think that I don't think by any means or any stretch of the imagination we should be getting consistently 3-0'd by a team like the Dallas Fuel, even though they have 3-0'd us the last two times we played them. I do think this was a bit of the case of we had our heads sort of focused on playoffs, and maybe the Dallas Fuel didn't, or they took the game a little bit more seriously, or maybe, you know, who knows, maybe they are just the better team. But either way, I was disappointed in the result, regardless of Baroy's tweet and whether or not we were focused on the playoffs. How about you, Chris? What was some of your initial sort of impressions on this game?
Yeah, obviously I was quite disappointed by the turnout too. I was hoping that we at least steal one or two maps.
Yeah,
I wasn't necessarily expecting us to win just because of what Baroy tweeted in the past, but the fact that we kind of handily got beat on all three maps was a little bit unfortunate. For me, it was kind of quite clear what lost us it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll get into that a little bit later, into the details a little bit later, but I thought it was a little bit more about on the strategy side and less on the performance side.
Yeah, we can talk about this now, because I think for me, it was a little bit disappointing to watch us lose this game, because I actually, for the most part, thought the team as a whole played pretty well.
Yes.
I'm not too sure about the meta itself, because I know that, again, a lot of people are focusing on the new patch, and the whole like monkey dive thing, I think, is a little bit more indicative of sort of the patch that's upcoming. Although who knows, maybe the Hall thing is legit. I'm not sure if it's going to reach the Overwatch League stage or not, but I do think that there's a real possibility we see the dive, and especially with like the boosted Ashe Mercy, right? Like, it seemed like we were sort of kind of playing a composition that will be a lot more better in the future patch as opposed to the current one. So I wonder if that played a little bit of part at it. But for the most part, I thought the team played really well. Like, I thought that Numlocked and Nevix had Numlocked had one of his best games of the season. I thought
Logic was always popping off.
Well, Logic was always popping off, and I thought that maybe the team coordination as a whole wasn't great, but I thought that Nevix and Numlocked actually dove together quite consistently. Sometimes the DPS or the supports, or, you know, the Zyll specifically in the Sombra, they might not have all been on the same page, but at the very least, the tank line I thought was fairly well coordinated. Numlocked still had a couple instances where he overextended and died. I like that he's being really aggressive, and there's sometimes I think he needs to get out a little bit earlier than he does, and he ends up going down. However, like, at the end of the day, like, I'd rather us just sort of push the pace and take these risks. I actually thought his monkey was really good. His dives are really good. Yeah. I thought Cruz. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I've been a big advocate of turning up the pace for Toronto Defiant for a while. I've been a criticizer of how passive they've been. Yeah. So if you have somebody like Numlocked who really does turn up the pace, and he does take risks sometimes, they don't pay off at points, like, I'm okay with that. It's all about fine-tuning those. And if you're kind of like being aggressive and there's sometimes where you fail at that, at least you are trying that and you're kind of learning around it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the key is going to be fine-tuning it, because I'd rather us just like practice, and if Numlock's going to be really aggressive, like, let's play around that, right? Like, let's try to reach his pace as opposed to the other way around. Obviously, when you see Kareev on the Ana, Kareev's Ana is going to be really good. Nobody's surprised by that. It's nice to see him back in the lineup. And then finally, I thought Cruz's Mercy was pretty good. And I mean, we've knocked Cruz quite a bit, you know, on this podcast throughout the year. I mean, not quite a bit, but we've definitely, you know, had some things to say, and for the most part, I stand by them. But damn, I really liked his Mercy. I mean, I'm assuming the shot calling and all that still there. I like that he was a pretty aggressive Mercy. Like, he wasn't too afraid to sort of have that balance between trying to get a pick or finish off a pick and then also still providing his team with health and the damage boost. And like you said, Logic's had one of his best games of the season as well. Like, he was almost solo carrying us at certain points in the game. And that's why it was so disappointing that I'm sitting here sort of talking up all of these individual players, and yet at the end of the day, we got 3-0'd.
So that's why I say it's strategy, right? Yeah. Is because, if you have each individual person performing well, they just weren't playing the right comp. They just weren't playing the right strategy, and they got beaten in that sense. So just before we move a little bit on to that, one thing that really did stand out to me in terms of a play was Numlocked. I think in Busan. I think I forgot what Busan map it was, but he was on Monkey and he pretty much solo dived the whole team, but which wouldn't normally be a bad play, but he was smart about it and he knew that he could charge up ult fast enough to be able to pop it, build it, get it, and pop it within that fight, even though he was by himself. And he got a couple kills out of it by himself, and it was a really good solo carry play that I think he deserves some admiration for.
Yeah, no, I have nothing but really good things to say about specifically Logix and Numlock. I thought they really showed their stuff, and Cruz and Crave had some amazing sleeps. And I mean, that was map one. And I mean, we talk about the positive, and there's one person sort of we're not talking about. And I don't think it's any secret that, like, I don't like putting an entire loss on a player. That's a little too harsh. Overwatch is such a team game. There's so much that goes into it. It's pretty hard for one player to make or break an entire game. But my God, if this wasn't a pretty big Sombra difference, in my opinion, that like really sort of cost this thing. Like, we're talking about Busan now, and if you go to the final map of Busan, it's a really close match overall. But obviously, when you run a dive composition with Sombra, and the EMPs are such a crucial part of that kit, and Doha gets off 2 EMPs, resulting in 2 team fight wins, and Zik gets off 0, right? And it's a one fight territory. Like, if Zik hits 1 EMP or farms in time to hit 1 EMP, and we're able to get a pick off of it, we probably win that map. There's multiple times, even when he sort of started improving his EMPs a little bit as the match progressed. At the end of the day, Doha would always have it first, so he would usually just wait for Zik to get it, and then Zik would EMP, and he would just counter EMP. And then they would just end up winning the fight anyways, and we would no longer have an EMP. Like, it was a pretty tough match overall from Zik. And honestly, like, a lot of my notes are just sort of like positive about, Numlock, positive about Cruz, positive play by Nevix. It's just like, thank you, Mr. Logix, like 7 different times throughout the match, because there's like 7 different fights where I think he like single-handedly was able to turn a match around. And then it's just like, oh, well, Zik has EMP for the final fight and dies before he's able to get it off. And I don't knock him too hard, because obviously I can't talk about this game and not bring up sort of, I think, his poor play. But also, in his defense, like, he's not a Sombra player, right? Like, I don't think Zik was ever brought in to play Sombra for this team. He's known for his Mei and for sort of the holes that agilities can't fill, Zik can fill for. So while I do have some criticisms, at the same time, I do feel for the kid. Right, like, I think he's a good player. I think his Mei is good. I think if he wasn't on ping, he would even have even better showings. But that's sort of my little rant, because I think his EMP usage was pretty poor.
Well, now I want to bring up something to you as a little bit of a discussion, and hopefully the listeners can chime in as well. But I feel like there's one thing we will not disagree on or have doubt on, is the fact that, like, his EMP usage when he did have it was piss poor. It was like it wasn't good. It's just that simple. It was late. It wasn't well timed.
His ability to farm it was poor too. Doha was like lapping him at points.
Yes. So the one big criticism too is the fact that he was not farming it. But this is the second part of me thinking, well, I think we just had a bad strategy. Was that I think we can both agree that he had good isolation plays and good like hack and pickoffs, and I think that there's a trade-off between centering your team around building and farming all charge for EMP, and centering your team around getting pickoffs and taking the advantage after that and winning it. Because in my mind, the amount of time it takes for you to set up a hack and pick, requires you to position yourself and run around in cloaked mode for a long period of time, for more time that you like. basically there's a trade-off, right? So there's a trade-off between time you spend in cloaked mode and time you spent farming EMP. And what Doha did was he spent more time farming EMP and getting EMP and less time positioning himself to get good hacks and pickoffs, which we noticed. I think he got less hacks and pickoffs, whereas Zyll spent a lot more time working those hacks and pickoffs and less time farming EMP, which is why he was getting lapped by Doha. So I think that to me, it makes sense why there's a little trade-off, and maybe there was a strategic decision to be made where they're like, let's base our win conditions around these pickoffs and less around EMP, and that strategy just didn't pay off.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know, because in my opinion, when you run the dive with the Sombra dive, it's hard to just be like, well, like, I understand what you're saying is that the way it's traditionally played is you sort of cycle those ultimates with your EMP, and the EMP is a team fight win, and you continually cycle them, but like, and that like going against the grain of thinking is like interesting. But for one, I don't think Doha had poor hacks. I agree that Zyll actually, the one probably benefit of his kit was that he was fairly consistently being able to get behind enemy lines and hacking one of the supports and actually getting the elimination. I think that's a testament to how good his tracking on Sombra is. Like, I think the guy's got mechanical skill, but like Doha, while he wouldn't necessarily get the hacks and pick the supports, he would definitely hack a target, and then the entire team would dive on that target, which would lead to the pick, right? You saw him multiple times hack one of the supports, and then all of a sudden, shortly thereafter, Gumsy would know would be on them, and they'd be getting the picks, right? Like, you don't need Sombra to hack and solo isolate a target to get a pick when you're running dive, right? You just need the hack to go off, and that's what like Numlocked and Nevix are for. So maybe you're right. Maybe they were running this interesting strategy where they would like, where Zyll would solo pick one of the healers, and then Numlocked and Nevix would solo dive somebody else while Logix had free reign to get the picks. I just think that the EMP cycle and like the hack dive and then EMP everyone won the team fight is just so strong that I would be really surprised if he tried to reinvent the wheel, like especially with a comp like dive. It's been around for so long. I don't know.
I'm not saying that like there's a complete trade-off where you're looking for more hacks and you completely negate building EMP. I think that they did both. I just think that Zyll spent more time like looking for those EMP picks than he did. Like if you think about it, like if I'm a Sombra and I'm looking more towards farming EMP, I'm just gonna go and just like unload some clips into some tanks, go behind enemy lines, unload some clips into some tanks, and spend a little bit more time, like not necessarily looking for a pick, but just building that EMP. Where Zyll would spend more time at picking the target and trying to make sure that the target's in a place, an area where they can't get enough support, so they do die. So I just think that like they weren't completely negating the EMP, but I think they're just spending a little bit more time and trying to methodically base their play around the hacks and picks, and it just didn't work out in that sense for them.
In some ways, I agree. I think the other issue is like, man, dive isn't one of those compositions like goats, for instance, right? Like if you're playing goats and the enemy team picks off your Zarya, the fight's over, right? Like the team that if you lost your Zarya and goats, you lost the team fight like 90-something% of the time, right? It was some absurd stat. Dive isn't quite like that. Like you getting a solo like a solo pick on like one individual character, especially when Mercy's on the field, is nowhere near as valuable as it was in like a ghost composition. Because you saw how many times we get the first pick and then we'd still lose the fight because we'd get the pick and then they would dive and we would dive, and then somewhere through the chaos the guy got res anyways. The person that Zyll picked off just ended up res, and Zyll would sometimes give his life to get that pick, and because he got a pick in the enemy backline, we couldn't get that res off, right? Like I don't think that the value of like getting the first pick in a team fight is like lower in a dive composition in relation to other metas that we're sort of used to, where like that first pick was incredibly valuable. You saw this like with May comps a lot too, with like May rush comps, right? One of those people go down because it was called like 2-2-2 goats. The first picks was once again really valuable. But dive, it's like a Sombra dive especially, it's not. I don't think it's the same. So I would like to see us try to farm the EMP a lot more, because Dallas just kind of like cycled us and ruled us with it, and it just wasn't working because he would get the first pick and we would still lose the team fight multiple times.
Yeah, I totally agree. I agree with that line of thought, and I think that I'm just trying to justify why, because it wasn't like close. It wasn't even close. Just like Doa would literally be lapping Zyll. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's just what I'm saying. It
some
was
sort of strategic difference like that. That was just like my guessing. Maybe that was their line of thinking. Maybe it wasn't. But
yeah.
yeah.
And again, all this can't be said. I want to just bring it back real quickly one more time. Zig's not supposed to play Sombra. It's not his main. So we're giving him a hard time, but obviously I do feel for the kid on ping being thrust into this situation. It can't be easy for him, right? Like I can't look at one side without looking at the other. On top of the fact that we know Baroy made out the tweet. We know Baroy made out the tweet saying that they were going to focus on the playoffs, that this game was going to be tough for fans to watch, right? He said that before this Dallas Fuel game. He said the shot game and this game are going to be hard for fans to watch, and he apologizes, but playoffs are all they care about. And I mean, he's right? Like he warned us. It was hard to watch, but it was to be expected. Now, to me, the bigger concern is, why wasn't Surefour in? And that's sort of the next, because I don't know about you, the rest of my notes are sort of just like, Kriv hits a really good sleep. Logix plays really well. Good dive by Numlocked. Zig's been lapped by EMP. So, I feel like we've sort of beaten that, you know what I mean, into the dirt. But if you want to say anything else but the game before we move on to our next couple of questions, I think now's your time.
No, I have nothing else to say. That, I don't want to cover this map by map.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't want to say a meaningless match, but it didn't go the way we wanted to. And, playoffs are what we all care about now. So, yeah, I think this brings up the broader question, which is like, even if you were going to just run the Sombra, and even if people aren't focusing too much on the current meta at hand because it's not what's being played for the playoffs, I find it really, really hard to believe or see a world in which Sombra is meta and you don't put Surefour in, right? If there was any chance of us seeing him in the playoffs, Chris, have we seen Surefour's last game for Toronto Defiant?
No, I mean, sorry. Yes, I think. Fuck, I don't know. I'm bouncing around a lot right now, and there's part of me that really, really, really wants him to come back and thinks he will come back, but I don't know. Like, there's no reason why I wouldn't see this, and I want somebody to prove me wrong. Like, if Surefour, if you're listening to this somehow, Adam, if you're listening to this, somebody who's listening to this, please let us know, like, what's going on, if it's true or not. Like, because I don't know. I just don't know, because it just doesn't make sense that he's not here. But then there could be something else that's happening. And we saw him in the most recent pump up video where Toronto Defiant were giving away shirts and stuff. And I don't know if he's just obligated to do that now. But man, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely part of it is going to be he's obligated, right? I think he is obligated to do some content. And he's still a content creator. I think, he streams a lot, produces stuff like that. So he definitely has that content creation side in him. But I'm going to try to justify it. And I kind of agree. Like, I don't know. In my opinion, there's one part of me that's like, you know what? Maybe they're just like, Toronto's really trying to big brain this. And they know that Surefour is going to play, but they don't want to give away any Surefour Sombra strat, so they're saving it all for playoffs. So they thought, hey, we might as well just play Zik in the meantime and give him some reps,
throwaway games,
see what happens. Exactly, the throwaway games, and just have Surefour rest up and scrim with the team in preparation for this. I think I'm grasping for straws by saying that, because I think you would still want Surefour to get the reps in on Sombra with the team, right, in like an actual game sort of scenario. So yeah. I'm grasping at straws for that. It's possible that he was just checked out and said he didn't want to play. I'm watching The Last Dance right now with the Michael Jordan documentary on Netflix, which is really good, by the way, if you haven't seen it. But at one point, there's the whole Scottie Pippen, spoiling a bit of it, but he quits on the team, right? And then... Yeah, spoiler alert. He quits on the team at one point in the playoffs, and the team was really upset by that. But then they all gather around and they gang together afterwards, and they're like, "Hey, it's okay. It happens to the best of us." And they rally around that, and they come back better than ever. I'm like, if someone's gonna show Surefour this and be like, "Bro, it's okay," because man, if Sombra's meta, which I think it will be in the next patch for playoffs, I think we gotta have Surefour and Logix in, right? Is there any chance that we perform well with the current lineup we're seeing, right? Is there any chance we hit top 2 without Surefour on his game, without Logix on his game? Personally, I don't necessarily think there is. No, I agree. There's got to be something that's going on, and look at we will have our answer in when this comes around. If you don't see him in first game and there's Sombra, that's it. It's not going to be coming on. Yeah.
You don't play the first game in playoffs, then, he's not coming on. He's never going to come on again.
100%. It's too bad, man, because I think we've not sure for here and there, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's still a really good player. He's still, Captain Canada, like
Canadian.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a fantastic Sombra. And an Ashe Sombra meta, like I generally think that with Logix and Surefour in the lineup, this team could be pretty good. So that's sort of our final question here. We'll bring it to the question of the day, which is, do the Toronto Defiant have any gas left in the tank for playoffs? Is this a case of just, you know what, we were focusing on playoffs and we had a couple bad games, but at the end of the day, we're going to show up when it matters, kind of like the Toronto Ultra did? Or is this the case where you just think that this team sort of just, it's been a rough year and we're going to give our best, but it's, the writing's on the wall, if you will?
You know what? I don't know. To be able to answer that, I feel like we have to be able to get into the mentality of Toronto Defiant. I almost said Ultra. And to me, there's 3 different mentalities that I think they could be at right now. The one is like, we need to make a comeback. We need to come on strong and really like put some effort into this. And I feel like that's not really the mentality of our players, just kind of like hearing about their personalities from hearsay over the course of the year. The other 2 are, they're either very mentally checked out and they're not in it anymore, or they're kind of in a more like take it as they go casual type of thing. Like, we haven't had the best year. Like, we're going to like put some effort into this. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And I think they're kind of more in that aspect, because it seems like just kind of like knowing their personalities, they all seem like the more quiet type. They're a little more casual and are just really good at the game and play a lot of it. So it seems like they're not people who would just be like, that type A personality where they're just pissed and they're checked out of the season. But it seems like they're a little bit more type B, where they're like, you know what, we're just gonna play, see how it goes. So I think they have a little bit of gas. That's my answer. I think they have a little bit of gas left in it. But I think that if they have some inversion, I don't know if they're gonna be able to face it. I think they're either gonna play well and win, or they're gonna stumble a little bit and fall.
Yeah, it's going to be so hard to read this like meta too, right? That's the final thing I think why we didn't choose Surefour. I wonder if the meta isn't a Sombra dive. I wonder if the meta is legitimately like a ball hog or like a Zarya hog, like we've seen in like, ranked. Like if it's Zarya hog, do you not like, who plays hog, right? Is it Nevix? Or does Nevix play the Zarya? Do you put like Surefour on the hog, right? Like we have a couple DPS players, right? Is Zik just in there to like fill the shoes while Surefour gets his hog ready, and you see Logix on Zarya? Like I have no idea. And again, that's grasping at straws. I think this team has some chance. I think it really does rely on like Surefour coming back, and I like Zik, but if it's Sombra, like I don't think there's a chance that we have to make a run. There's too many good Sombras in the league. There's too many Sombras who've been playing it their entire career. I think like Logix is a really competitive person too. I've seen his stuff on Twitter. I know Numlocked really wants to win. Obviously, I think everybody wants to win. It just comes down to like, do we get the meta down correctly? And I think, can we put our best team forward? And I think if we can't, unfortunately, we're going to have to sort of like, give our best. And if it doesn't work out, just look into next year. But man, I would really like to see Surefour show up in the playoffs and then Toronto have a good run. Like I think top 2 is hella optimistic by like any stretch of the imagination. But it would be nice to at least like get a win in there. Like if we do end up facing the Dallas Fuel, for instance, in the first round, which I think is probably the most likely scenario. Even if we end up facing like the Atlanta Reign, for instance, like there's a couple different teams that we could play in the first round depending on how the other games go. I hope we can get a win, man. I hope we go out with at least somewhat of a bang and not just like a whimper. Yeah,
I agree. That was well said. When I think about the personalities of everybody on the team, there's nobody on the team that I can imagine them like losing and them like just like screaming into the mic and like smashing the table or something, like you or me too when we lose a game every once in a while. Not like in a toxic way, obviously, like in a like fire in their belly type of way. That's why
there's no Michael Jordan on the team, is what you're saying. Again, I'm using Last Dance references because that's what I've been watching for the past couple of days. There's no like Michael Jordan was someone like when he took a loss, right? It like lit a fire under him, and he would like work out like consistently the next day until he fixed what he needed to, right? And he would like motivate his team around him. Like I kind of agree. We had like a lot of teams of like Scottie Pippins, which is fine. Scottie Pippen, is a fantastic player. He's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. But he definitely works best when you have like Jordan alongside
a mix. Yeah. So I don't have anything else to add. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Dehydrated.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, well, I mean, at this point, I think we've sort of covered everything we wanted to cover. So with that out of the way, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I don't. You know what? If you guys liked what you heard, please give us a like and a follow or a subscribe, I guess. If you want to comment, if you want to chat with us, just type something up in the comments and we'll be happy to chat with you.
Yeah, and I think my final thought is just, man, I just hope that we can bounce back and Defiant can give the Defiant fans the playoff run that the Ultra were able to give the Ultra fans. Man, let's get it. We love the Toronto. We always represent Toronto. We know you guys do too. So yeah, with that out of the way, thank you for watching. Get excited for playoffs, and as always, I hope you enjoyed.